The Saturday market in northern Ghana woke before the sun did. Smoke from cooking fires curled into the gray dawn, mingling with the scent of peppers, roasting maize, dust, sweat, and old metal. Stall owners yawned awake like restless spirits, stretching beneath patched tarps. Chickens scattered. Hawkers called out half-heartedly. But one trader stood out even before he arrived. People whispered his name like a curse they feared would answer back. Kofi Boateng, the man who never ran out of goods. The man who sold everything, even when no one else could find supply. The man who grew richer each market day, while others struggled. And the man whose stall always smelled faintly of blood. No one spoke the suspicion aloud. Not anymore. Not after what happened to the last man who confronted him. Who vanished the next night, leaving only his sandals neatly placed at the edge of the forest, as if waiting for someone to come fetch him. On this particular morning, Kofi arrived later than usual. The market fell into an uneasy hush as he walked through the stalls. His footsteps too soft for a man his size. His shadow somehow stretching farther than the morning light should allow. He wore his usual dark green cloth draped over one shoulder, the colors richer than anything villagers could afford. His eyes were sharp, too sharp, like they cut through people rather than saw them. But his smile was wrong. Too wide, too practiced, too hungry. He reached his stall, larger than most, covered in vibrant cloth, loaded with goods no one else had managed to find in years. Imported rice, rare spices, phone batteries, silks, beads, solar lamps, even perfumes. Today, however, there was something new placed at the center of the table. A small carved wooden box. Heavy. Decorated with strange symbols. Something that looked far older than him. Or the market. Or even the village. When he opened the box, just a crack, a faint red glow shimmered from within. A breeze passed through the stall. Cold, unnatural, wrong. Traders nearby shivered. Kofi smiled to himself. "Tonight," he whispered. "It will be fed." And he began arranging his items. Later that morning, a young woman approached his stall. Her name was Amma, a single mother trying desperately to feed her little son. She had heard stories about Kofi's prices, how unbelievably cheap they were. If he chose to sell to you, she approached with respect. "Kofi, good morning," she said softly. He looked up. His eyes glimmered. "Amma," he replied, though she had never told him her name. "You are looking for maize flour today." She froze. "Yes, how did you?" He raised a hand, stopping her. "I know many things." Something twisted in her chest at the way he said it. He reached under his table and brought out a perfectly sealed bag of maize flour, something no one else in the entire region had been able to stock for weeks. Amma's eyes widened. She desperately needed it. "How much?" she asked. He smiled slowly. "For today, nothing." She blinked. "Nothing. You may take it," he said. "Payment comes later." A chill crawled up her arms. Kofi leaned closer. Too close. She could smell the faint metallic scent of blood on his breath. "Tonight," he said softly, "when you hear 3 knocks at your door, open it." Amma stepped back. Her throat tightened. Why would anyone knock? "Tonight," he repeated. 3 knocks. Open. And then he turned away. The conversation was over. She clutched the bag, feeling suddenly sick, and hurried away. As she left, the wooden box on Kofi's table rattled. Softly, like something inside was shifting. He placed a hand over the lid, whispering in a language older than any living soul in the market. Something whispered back. Amma's son, little Kojo, waited by the cooking fire that evening. The maize flour boiled into perfect porridge. Soft, thick, fragrant. They hadn't eaten this well in months. Kojo smiled, his small face lighting up. But Amma couldn't shake the unease. The way Kofi had looked at her. The way he had known her name. The way he had said, "Payment comes later." And worst of all, 3 knocks. Night deepened. Frogs screamed from the wet grass. Crickets went silent too early. The wind that usually rustled the trees had become still, unnaturally so. Amma sat by the doorway, hands trembling. Kojo slept on the mat beside her, his tiny chest rising and falling peacefully. A single sharp sound. Amma froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Louder. Closer. Her breath caught in her throat. Third one. Everything inside her told her not to open that door. Every instinct screamed run. She moved slowly toward the door anyway, terrified, shaking, unable to stop herself, as if something was pulling her forward. She lifted her hand. And before she touched the door, Kojo whispered behind her, "Mommy. Someone is calling my name." Amma turned sharply. Kojo was still lying on his mat. But his lips moved again. Eyes still closed. "He's calling me from outside. Mommy, don't open." Amma stumbled backward, panic rising in her chest. A voice whispered from the door. Not knocking, not calling, just whispering. "Amma, open for me." Her blood turned to ice. She didn't open the door. She didn't move. She didn't breathe. The whispering stopped. But something slid past the window. Not footsteps. Something gliding. Dragging. Kojo whimpered. "Mommy. Why is he sniffing the window?" Amma grabbed her son and held him tight, eyes wide with terror. Outside, something pressed a shadowy hand against the window. Too long, too thin, too distorted. A voice hissed. "You refused payment." Amma screamed silently. The shadow faded. The night went dead still. At dawn, she rushed to the market, clutching Kojo's hand. She found Kofi preparing his stall. His back turned to her. She shouted, "What do you want from me?" He didn't turn around. "You did not open your door," he said calmly. Amma trembled. "I'm not giving you my son." That he turned. Slowly. His eyes were darker than night. His pupils were not round. They were vertical like a serpent's. "Amma," he said coldly, "everyone must sacrifice something." Her stomach dropped. "No. You owe me," he hissed. She grabbed Kojo and fled. Kofi watched her leave, his face expressionless. Then he whispered, "Tonight, I will collect." And the wooden box on his table began to bleed. Kwabena did not sleep that night. Not really. He closed his eyes only to see the same thing again and again. The faceless figure standing across the room. Those long limbs bending at impossible angles. And the whisper that felt like hot breath sliding inside his skull. "Another. Bring me another." When the first rooster crowed at dawn, Kwabena jolted upright, drenched in sweat. For a moment he didn't understand where he was. His mind was still in the shrine, still standing before that monstrous presence that called itself Nokwar, the god of silent debts. And then he heard sounds outside. Humans chattering, goats bleating, metal pans clanging. The world moved on, unaware of what he had done. Kwabena rose from bed with trembling legs. When he stepped outside, the sunlight felt too bright, too clean for someone like him. He walked to his stall in the market reluctantly, expecting villagers to look at him differently, to sense the rot now clinging to him like smoke. But instead, people rushed to him, as if pulled by an unseen thread. "Akwaba, Kwabena. Do you have any dried tilapia? Kwabena, your spices. They smell good today, oh. Ei, Kwabena. These yams, they are glowing. How much is this? I will pay anything. His stall overflowed with customers. Every basket he opened smelled fresh, rich, irresistible. Even the vegetables he bought 2 days ago looked newly picked. He did not understand how, until he remembered the whisper. Your goods will flourish, as long as your offerings do. By noon, he had sold more than he usually sold in 3 days. Money filled his wooden cash box, spilling over. He kept his head down, trying to hide the guilt twisting inside him, but people only smiled at him with admiration. You are blessed, Kwabena. Whatever you are doing, keep doing it. His throat tightened. If they only knew. As he wrapped a bag of spices for a customer, he noticed something odd. His shadow on the ground was delayed. When he moved, it lagged half a second behind, like something wearing his shape but struggling to keep up. He blinked hard. The shadow snapped back, perfectly aligned. The customer noticed his trembling hand. You day all right? Kwabena forced a smile. Yes, just tired. But deep inside, panic grew roots. When the day finally ended and he packed up his goods, his bag felt lighter. Not physically, but spiritually, like something inside him had leaked. As he walked home, he constantly felt like footsteps followed him. Barefoot. Bragging. He turned again and again. Nothing. Only the dark path between the market and the village, lit by weak lanterns, surrounded by forests that whispered when the wind blew. When he reached home and lit a small oil lamp, he found something on his doorstep. Handprint. Black. Long-fingered. Smudged as though burned into the wood. His breath left him in a sharp gasp. He scrambled backward and looked around for any sign of someone nearby. Nothing moved. Only the night waited. His heart thundered. He entered the house, locked the door, and pushed a table against it. He sat with his back against the wall, lamp flickering beside him, listening for any sound from outside. A whisper. Not from outside. From behind him. Low. Wet. Bragging. Kwabena. He froze. His spine turned to ice. He turned his head slowly toward the lamp. The flame stretched upward unnaturally, flickering as though a mouth was blowing onto it, or sucking something from the air. Then the whisper came again. Tomorrow, another soul. He clamped his eyes shut. No, he whispered to himself. I won't. I can't. But the darkness around him rippled, pulsing with a presence he could not see. A cold weight settled on his chest. You already started. There is no stopping. And just like that, and he didn't know how, he saw a vision in front of him. Woman. One of his regular customers. Laughing with her child. Smiling warmly. The whisper curled into his mind like smoke. She will be the next. Kwabena gasped and shoved himself off the ground. No. Not her. His voice cracked. Sweat soaked his shirt. He grabbed the lamp and swung it wildly at the air, shouting, Leave me. Go away. I won't kill anyone. The flame sputtered. Darkness swelled. Vanished. The presence retreated. As though amused by his desperation, Kwabena stood trembling in the center of his house until the silence pressed on his lungs. He didn't sleep. Not even for a second. By sunrise, his eyes burned and his hands shook uncontrollably. He stepped outside to wash his face, only to see something far worse. His neighbor Kweku stood at his door, staring at him strangely. You look different, Kweku said. Are you feeling well? Kwabena forced a smile. Yes, I am fine. But Kweku's eyes narrowed. Last night I heard someone calling your name, from the forest. Kwabina's blood froze. Kweku continued softly. I thought it was you. But the voice. It didn't sound human. Kwabina swallowed hard. Before he could answer, they heard something behind them. Something soft. Bragging. They both turned. A goat was standing near their feet, but its shadow was wrong. Twisted, elongated, with horns far too long and legs bent backward. The goat blinked. Its eyes were completely black. It let out a sound no goat should make. A deep human-like groan. Kweku jumped back. Ei. What kind of? Before he could finish, the goat bolted into the bushes, shadow warping and twisting behind it. Kwabina's heart hammered violently. Kweku stared at him. What is happening, my friend? Kwabina opened his mouth, then closed it. He could not tell the truth. Nobody would believe him. And even if they did, he would be killed before the god could touch him. So he forced a smile that felt like a crack splitting across his face. Maybe, just a sick animal. Kweku did not look convinced. Kwabina left for the market early that day, hoping to distract himself, to pretend he could outrun the nightmare. He could not. When he reached his stall, customers were already waiting, some smiling, others waving money in their hands. But behind their cheerful faces, Kwabina saw something else. Their shadows. They were moving on their own. Not much. Small twitches. Head tilt. A finger bending. But enough to make his stomach twist. Enough to show that Nokwar was already selecting. Already claiming. Every customer's shadow seemed to whisper to him. Choose. 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 By afternoon, Kwabina's head throbbed. His eyes blurred. He felt sick, feverish, as if something inside him was decaying. He packed up early and rushed home, barely able to carry his suitcase. When he reached his door, he froze. A clay pot sat in the center of his room. He hadn't placed it there. It was filled with dark, thick liquid. Blood. Fresh. Still warm. Floating inside was something white. When he leaned closer, horror punched the air from his lungs. It was a human tooth. Then a voice whispered behind him. Tomorrow. Or I choose for you. Kwabina screamed. The night Kwabina returned from the forest, the air in Suator felt wrong. It wasn't wind. It wasn't the whisper of palm leaves. It was something heavier. Something listening. His wives were gone. Their voices, laughter, their footsteps. Silenced, as if their very memories had been swallowed. And the shadows in his courtyard had grown longer than they should in moonlight. Kwabina stood alone, clutching the blood-soaked cloth of his last trade, eyes darting. His breath came out shaky. His chest throbbed. For the first time in his life, Kwabina felt fear dragging its fingers across his neck. A slow knock echoed through the courtyard. Not a human knock. Not a visitor's knock. A deliberate, patient, counting knock. Talk, talk, talk. Kwabina froze. No one knocked on doors like that in Suator. Sounded like something tapping bone against wood. He whispered to himself. Not now, not yet. But the knocking grew louder. Talk, 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 talk. He stepped toward the courtyard gate. The moon dimmed. The trees bent inward. And then, from the other side of the wooden gate, a low voice, breathless, like someone speaking without lungs. Trader, your debt matures tonight. Kwabina stumbled backward. His heartbeat thundered in his throat, trying to escape. No. I will give more sacrifices. More. I can pay. But the voice laughed, softly. Not a human laugh. Not even an animal laugh. It sounded like dry leaves being crushed under something unseen. Your sacrifices were accepted. But you continued trading. And your profit multiplied. You took more than your offerings equaled. Kwabena fell to his knees. He remembered the warning. Every trader who made the pact was offered prosperity equal only to what he was willing to lose. He had taken more. He had traded more. He had grown greedy. Now, his debt exceeded his offerings. The gate creaked open. No one pushed it. No wind touched it. It opened as if an invisible hand had slid across it. Slowly. Kwabena shut his eyes, trembling. When he opened them, the gate was fully open, and no one stood there. But the courtyard was no longer empty. Something had joined him. The air bent. Shadows moved independently. And behind him he felt a presence towering, taller than a palm tree, yet impossibly weightless. Kwabena ran. He bolted out of the courtyard, sprinting down the trail to Nsuater Market. The dust scattered beneath his feet like frightened spirits. When he reached the market, everything was wrong. Every stall he had ever traded with, every mat he once sat on, every tarpaulin roof he haggled under, was gone. In its place stood a market of shadows. Thousands of them. Hollow silhouettes shaped like people twisting their necks unnaturally. Their faces smooth and blank. Black smoke curled around them like veins. And their bodies, all bowed toward him in unison. Kwabena staggered back. No, 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 no. This cannot be. He turned to run. But the shadows all turned their heads without turning their bodies. Their necks cracked, bending toward him. Debt! The word vibrated through the market, shaking the ground, rattling bones of the dead beneath. Kwabena screamed and fell. His stall materialized in front of him. Its wooden top rotting, eaten, covered with claw marks. And on it lay everything he ever gained. Gold coins, bundles of cash, fine cloth, perfumes, jewelry, imported radios, ivory figurines, all stacked in a mountain. And then, blood began pouring from between the items, dripping, flowing, flooding the table's edge. Kwabena scrambled backward as the blood touched his feet. The shadows whispered. Your success was fed by souls. The souls now demand you. One who trades in life must pay with life. Kwabena shook his head violently. No, I will not die. The whisper responded. You already did. The moment you signed the pact. Kwabena ran again. Through the ghost market. Through the dissolving streets. Through the palm forest that seemed to close around him like a mouth. Branches grabbed at his ankles. Leaves whispered prophecies of suffering. Night birds screeched and flew backward instead of forward. It felt like nature itself was rejecting him. He reached the sacred clearing. The place where he had first met the god of silent debts. The forest pulsed. The air glowed faintly red. And then, a tall, thin, impossibly stretched figure rose out of the earth. Its spine bent backward. Its arms were too long. Its fingers were not fingers but sharp, thin branches dripping with the remains of past victims. Its face was made of smooth bark. Yet 2 glowing pits burned where eyes should be. Kwabena's voice shook. You said prosperity. You said wealth. You said. The creature's head cracked sideways and the mouth split open wider than its face. Out came a voice with many layers. His wives' voices, the butcher's voice, the herbalist's voice, the elder's voice. Even his own. All prosperity requires payment. The demon took a step. The ground died beneath each footfall. Grass turning black in an instant. Take someone else. Kwabena cried. Take a stranger. Take a thief. Take. The forest echoed with dry cracking laughter. You cannot escape your own shadow. The demon raised one branch-like hand. The shadows from the market began sliding into the clearing, slithering across the ground toward him. Hundreds of hands, hundreds of mouths, hundreds of silent deaths. Kwabena screamed and ran deeper into the forest. But the shadows followed, pouring like liquid darkness, flooding the trees, swallowing moonlight, closing in. Kwabena stumbled and fell into a pit, a shallow grave dug long ago. His own grave. But the soil was fresh. On the wooden board above it, carved in deep gouges, was his name. Kwabena Owusu, debtor of shadows. Kwabena thrashed wildly. No. Well, I will not lie in this. I will not die like this. He clawed at the dirt walls. It screamed. But the earth shifted, bones beneath cracking open, swallowing him inch by inch. Above, the demon leaned over the grave. Its head rotated full circle. Its branches spread wide. You traded souls for profit. Now your soul will balance the scales. The shadows poured in, burying Kwabena. He gasped once, twice. Then something icy slid into his chest. His heart froze. His body stiffened. But his eyes kept moving. He was conscious. He was alive as the soil covered his face. He felt the weight of every victim he had traded. He heard their whispers inside the dirt. And just before the last handful fell, the demon whispered, "Prosperity achieved. Payment completed. The earth sealed." Kwabena's heartbeat faded. And Suator's night fell silent. The next morning, the villagers found his stall in the real market. All his goods were gone. The stall was empty except for one thing. A wooden carving of a tall, thin tree-like figure, with a blood drop painted on its chest. Below it carved, "Trade with care." The villagers whispered. Some believed Kwabena had traveled to another region. Others said he had gone to Accra to escape debts. But the elders knew. Because that night, as the old woman who cleaned the market walked home, she heard something behind her. Talk, talk, talk. He turned. A long shadow stood behind her, its neck bent, its body twisted like a broken branch. It whispered, "Would you like prosperity? If this story chilled your bones, then imagine what the next one will do. Subscribe. If you dare to return.